Saiyr.
This is Nara.
And welcome to our travel log adventures. Today we are getting straight into the spooky season. We have a special guest today. Come on in!
There we go, Santika.
So go ahead and tell everyone what we're doing today.
Sure, where we are standing right now, although we've got a spirit house behind us, this is the Prakanong River. So we're going to hop on a short boat ride. It'll be nice and gentle. However, it can be a little spooky. Because the direction that we're going is where we're going up to Wat Mahuba, which is where Mae Nak and her story, where basically the Mae Nak shrine is, and where a lot of people had gone into the temple to escape Mae Nak. Although she's very beloved by Thais across the way. It is the most famous ghost story in Thailand. She's beloved. However, during that era when she was alive, she was a serious terror.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. This is how Pimak would have kind of come back from the war. But what happened when he was sent to war, Mae Nak passed away in childbirth. So both Mae Nak and the baby, Pimak's baby, had passed away. But when he came back, she was still here. Now, she was a ghost. But because she was so in love with her husband that she was able to kind of transcend the different worlds. So she was still present with him. When he came back, he could see her, he could touch her, he could feel her, he could see the baby. However, everyone else in the neighborhood knew that she was a ghost. But what she would do to make sure that nobody told her husband was that she would ultimately kill them. She is kind of Thailand's most beloved ghost. The reason they have the shrine to her is for several different reasons. People come and ask for lottery winning numbers, or they ask to hopefully have their children not sent off to war or to the armed forces, or for perhaps a safer pregnancy. So there's quite a bit going on there as well. So we can walk on in. So this is the temple itself. Eventually, when Mae Nak was discovered to be a ghost and she really went out after people to do them in, people ran into the temple for safety. Spiritually, she wasn't allowed into the temple.
Is that the famous monk who got rid of her?
Right. There's a couple different stories exactly what happened to her, but that monk apparently did an exorcism, so to speak, where he convinced her to go into the world beyond. There's stories where he eventually chipped away at her forehead and still carries it around in his little bag. There's stories that she was actually kind of burned and thrown into the river, but then somebody else eventually found it and brought it up and kind of re-released her. So there's quite a few different versions, but the ultimate version is Mae Nak is a vicious woman to anyone other than her husband and child. And what happens is she dropped the lime through the house, so the flooring of the house. These are old wooden houses on stilts. And, rather than going down to the stairs like a normal person would, ghosts in Thailand have the ability to reach out. So when he saw that she reached down through the floorboard to the ground, and obviously her arm was as long as from here to the temple, he knew, my friends are right. And that's when everything started to fall apart.
He's like, my wife's a ghost.
Yes. It's kind of no man's land. Nobody wants to, bad karma, bad spirits, still a lot of ghosts on the property. But this would happen at the very end of 2008. We're coming up to the 15-year anniversary. But to give a little bit of a history of what's happened here, and I still do think that if you talk to some of the motorcycle guys in the area, they'll tell you that they still do hear screams, especially at night. Or they'll feel like there's somebody on the back of a motorbike, or a taxi driver. The stories of these guys where they feel like there's still somebody within the car. But what happened here on December 31st, 2008 is just really, really a shame. But there's also some really funky things about that night called Burn. Also, Santika was about to also go under renovations. It was kind of called Santika's Last Night. So along with Burn, Santika's Last Night, and then at about 12:30 a.m. that night, just a short time after the official New Year, something caught fire. Now, they're still not entirely sure, was it pyrotechnics on the stage? We do have clips of sparklers, but were sparklers perhaps the result? Or did somebody perhaps shoot a firework from outside that hit the roof of Santika? Or whatever it was, people were slow to catch on that it was not part of the show. People were rapidly trapped once it became very clear that this was indeed a fire and not just part of a New Year's Eve celebration. People went for the only exit they knew. And that caused a bottleneck, it caused a stampede. People were quickly consumed. The roofing had a lot of plastic and a lot of flammable materials in it. So that caught fire. People were caught underneath dripping hot fire plastic. The smoke caught people. People got caught in the front way. They had windows all on the second floor. Those were all barred up, and they were put there to help prevent theft. People did not know how to go out the back doors. Some of the people that did survived by going down into the basement, into the bathrooms. That was considered one of the few safe areas. When they did come in, there were enough survivors within the bathroom because they were able to escape a lot of the smoke. And all of it is just a real tragedy. It was never supposed to be a nightclub. It's on license. It was considered to be a restaurant. So it had never gone through the proper fire regulation licenses. In this area, there's not supposed to be any nightclubs. So again, it never had a nightclub license. Once they started to do a little bit of a study of what happened here, apparently a lot of the signatures were forged, and they found out that one of the owners was on the police force as well. So I believe it was about 67 people from several different countries, obviously most of them being Thai, had perished in the fire. So many bodies were burned that they just had to lay out a lot of the bodies here on this field in which we're sort of overlooking now. There were stories of people coming in to help pull bodies through any kind of window that they could find or the entryway. Just real horrible. So it has sat vacant here for 15 years. It still would not surprise me if the land is still considered tragically tainted. So I mean, this is really a bizarre, it's a very unique temple. It's not like all of the others.
Wasn't this a school too? Or?
It is. In fact, it still is. I think the school is closed now. And I've always wondered if the school knows whether or not this is where the last beheading took place. And obviously there would have been bodies buried underneath the school. So apparently the procession was to try to get the person that was going to be beheaded into a little bit of a trance. Kind of get them to relax. I think they were usually blindfolded, usually sat down. Perhaps it was a musical dance. Once they would eventually chop off the head with a long sword once they felt that there was a certain acceptance. But I think what we'll do is I'll walk you to the back to where some of the artwork is, and then kind of we'll work our way to the front. I think a lot of these are kind of depictions. Anytime I see a lot of water around the demons, I think the story is right as Buddha was about to reach enlightenment, a lot of the demons sort of came in, but they were eventually drowned out by Mae Nak.
Ooh, did you hear it?
I did.
Ooh. Dun dun. So this is a little bit like, not nearly as famous as Mae Nak, but also known as a cold-hearted killer. He had grown up, and he's always still referred to as a very handsome, young, suave man. He was very much a ladies' man from a young age. However, he was also characterized as being very, very lazy, didn't like to work. So he quickly learned that he had a little bit of a charm and a penchant for wooing women, for wooing rich women, and eventually started dipping into much more black magic, Saiyr and black magic, sort of the tricky arts, a lot of gambling. He was sort of kicked out. These are all sort of traits that monks are not supposed to have: womanizing, gambling, all of this. But he seemed to be inclined towards all of this. He was really
a roguish young guy that got away a lot on his looks and his charm, where he would woo women for their wealth, and then he would end up sleeping with them, and then they'd get emotionally attached to him, and then he'd break them off. But then eventually, as he got a little older, he still had this. He eventually had a situation in which he apparently impregnated one of his women that he had wooed, or that had come to him for black magic. A lot of people would come to them hoping that he could make their husband fall back in love with them, or a wife fall back in love with them. So what he would do is he would almost take advantage of these women that were in very vulnerable spots. At least in the one situation that they started to recognize was there was a young girl who was impregnated by him. She went missing. And they traced it back to her having a relationship with him. He's also known as Iron Chest Boom Pimp. Because what he would do, he would put bodies in these beautiful treasure chests and then go and sink them in the river. And he would weight them down with rocks and stones and bricks, hoping that they would not come back up. But eventually they would come back up. People would find them. They found the girl stuffed away in the treasure chest, and then he ultimately became the last beheading in 1919 here in Ekamai, which is a very developed area now, but wasn't at that time. This would have been considered very much more a remote area. He's not very well known in Thailand at the end of the day, but they think they can trace about 7 different murders to him. Again, most of them women, most of them are vulnerable women, most of them that he would tie up in a mosquito net and then throw into a treasure chest. Coming from the West, we're like, what are you doing? How can you guys have all these temples to these people that were responsible for killing people? But what happens is there's in the Buddhist beliefs and the Thai beliefs, there's a lot of forgiveness. There's a lot of purifying of the soul, of purifying when somebody has gone through something like this and is beheaded. Eventually, in time, there's forgiveness. The soul gets purified. In some of the spiritual beliefs that people do learn, their spirits are cleansed and purified, and when they come back next time, they will be much better. But the number of Thai horror films that are based around universities seems to be much more popular than any other sort of genre. They're not taking place in fields, or there's always the haunted houses, but universities, there's something about university life, whether it be everyone kind of in the same uniform, or young, or living away from home for the first time, but a tremendous number of ghost stories or ghost movies taking place within universities. And one of the reasons I go on here is I'll take you into the art museum if that's open today, because it always just kind of feels a little creepy. Spirit house is not always there.
It is the building.
It smells paranormal.
There's just something about it.
Who built this, Because they have to have imported all this.
Yeah, I think originally this would have been an old Thai home that usually in this area would have belonged to somebody from the royal family. This might have been bedrooms or kids' playrooms.
100-something years.
Listen to this. So this installation is called Still Life of Silence and Emptiness. That's kind of creepy, but then it says they're on what appear to be coffins.
Coffin.
Oh.
So like the bo tree, the fig tree, the bodhi tree, and the other big one is the banyan tree. That's where a lot of those garlands come from. It's about respecting the nature, and then sometimes there are ghosts, especially female ghosts, that live within the trees themselves. So most ghosts in Thailand are a little bit more male, but you do have the Nang Mai, the tree ghosts, and you've got 2 big ones. You've got Nang Tak Yen, which usually is a very benevolent ghost for the most part. And then there's Nang Tani, which lives in banana trees that usually will come out on full moon and is also very attractive, and men fall in love with her and she's very pleasant with them until somebody cheats on her. Then she'll kill you. the things about amulets is, you know, people ask, so how come everybody's wearing one? I mean, especially probably more men than women, but still it's a very robust business. They fall into different categories. You know, you've got ones that are a little bit more religiously affiliated, which was all intended, the origins were to kind of help continue Buddhism. You see ones, you see kind of cat's eyes or tiger teeth and that sort of thing. We'll see some of the black magic one. And we'll also see some amulets that need a little bit of a spell before they actually work. You know, so people ask if they work, and well, the story I tell is the Thai owner of one of the English Premier Leagues, Leicester City, they, I guess about 5 years ago, they won the English Premier League, which caught everyone off guard. And they say, you know, how'd you do it? How'd you win? And one of the stories was apparently he bought a very valuable amulet that kind of sort of helped propel that team to victory. But then if somebody says, do they work or not, what was interesting about him, so this is the Thai owner of the English Premier League, he was taking a helicopter out of one of the games and the helicopter crashed and he was in the helicopter. So do the amulets work? Perhaps. Leicester City won the English Premier League out of nowhere, but then he tragically passed away in a helicopter accident as he was flying out of the stadium. Like a Kumintong is like a little baby that a lot of people put in their homes for wealth and success. But the history of a Kumintong is very, very dark. They were either miscarriages or abortions or stillbirths that were then taken by a witch doctor, oftentimes at a temple, and given a dark spell, kind of roasted over a kind of a spitfire, and then painted either usually in gold, and that's how the little boy became Kumintong. But he's supposed to be very, very powerful. And every now and then you'll hear a story about somebody getting arrested at the airport for carrying fetuses or just wild stuff. You see a lot of these oils on things. I mean, it would all be fake now, but a lot of these oils were intended, originally the power would be taken from the chin, the fat chin of a baby, and kind of used to help conduct some spells as well. These are a little bit more basic, but kind of like the Luke Tep. When people do believe in a lot of black magic, they take it quite seriously. So here's some of your Luke Tep, which were very popular about 4 or 5 years ago. It was enhanced with a little bit of celebrity endorsement. Some celebrities has kind of said they really brought him good luck. His show was much more popular, so it became a big craze for a very short period of time. But people would hop on the airplanes with these little dolls, and they would then have to pay for an extra plane seat. Just wild stuff. Choose when you've got so many. It's really said that they actually kind of choose you. So when you come across the right one, it almost leaps out and grabs you. Kind of stop here just because you've got the more classic kind of spirit houses here. You've got the San Prapum and the San Jiao Ti. They're all spirit houses and they're all animistic in origin, which basically means, in a really simplified layman's term, is like, look, if you're going to build something on the spiritual land, you've got to still keep us happy. You've got to give us a little house. You know, you're building a new building, you're building an apartment, you're building businesses. Keep us happy by creating a little house for us. So that's where this comes from. Now this one, it's a single column. So this one is connecting more to the other world. So that connects to the gods, the spirits. Whereas the San Jiao Ti, which has got usually 4 bases, is about connecting more to the earth, to the ground, to the spiritual energy of the earth. And then these are all just kind of different offerings. People oftentimes ask about the red Fanta. And the simple answer is that the spirits like sweet things. But from my understanding, it's actually a symbol of sacrificial blood. Oh. So it's much easier, much cheaper, easier to do Fanta than it is to cut the head off a pig or a chicken. And this is also how the ghost culture is really spread, is these little cartoon peas, but so basically ghost cartoon are kind of spread throughout Thailand. here, this is an area that does a lot of fortune tellers. There's all kind of sorts of different fortune tellers, but what's kind of important to note is how prevalent fortune tellers are really, they play a huge role in Thai society. And in the kind of the West, they're kind of seen as a little bit of fun, maybe a little bit more playful. It's something you might do. But in Thailand, it's taken really quite seriously. There's probably rarely a situation in which a large political decision is taken without seeking some kind of advice from an astrologer, whether it be a palm reader, whether it be a tarot card reader. They also read like moles on the face and kind of give some information there. But it's serious business. So this guy will do like 300 baht, about 10 US dollars for a reading. They've always got pictures of their celebrities. So you've got the Museum of Forensic Sciences over there, but it's got everything from gunshots to knife wounds to stabbings. And for the longest time, it was also where, embalmed in fluid in a glass case, was Thailand's most notorious serial killer, Seei. Yeah, so he was in a cage. He's just there, propped up, and it's just wild that Thailand eventually took him out a couple years ago. And his history is, he was a Chinese national, but was also involved with some wars with Japan and China. During the battle, sometimes he developed the flavor and the taste profile for eating human flesh, because on the battlefield they sometimes ran out of food, and the only things that they could potentially eat was dead soldiers. So he developed what apparently is a taste for human flesh. Where any of this is true or not, we don't really know. There's starting to be a belief that perhaps it's not. So when he came to Thailand, he was working a little bit in southern Thailand, eventually came a little further north, and was working just as a gardener. You know, there had been some people, some kids that had started disappearing, but really had not put it together too much. Until a father had sent his young little boy, like a 7-year-old boy, to go and get more produce from the market, kind of an open market, and the boy didn't come back. So the father went looking. As he was looking for the little boy, he came across what appeared to be a little bit of a bonfire, and a gentleman roasting a bonfire, and inside the bonfire was the young boy. The suspicion is that Seei was roasting the boy for eating, something he liked. There was other kids that had gone missing, and it really became, this is really Thailand's boogeyman. This is, people would grow up and say, whereas in the U.S. we're like, don't look under the bed, the boogeyman's under the bed. Thailand's version is Seei. Don't go out late at night, otherwise the boogeyman, Seei, is going to get you.
Eat your liver.
Yes, right. You heard that as a kid, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to now go upstairs. We're going to take